We will change now to English, and it is my privilege to introduce Paul Hardiman. Paul Hardiman is a very well-known expert in terms of IATF with a huge background in this area. After 15 years working for the automotive industry, Paul was one of the first steel QS 9000 auditors in the UK. Paul has worked for the SMMT, as SMMT and as oversight office for the IATF, and contributed hugely for the process approach development and training development for the IATF. Paul is also connected with the Japanese Institute of Plant Maintenance, and more recently, since 2015, Paul started his own company, Quality Partner. But again, and since a long time, Paul is a third-party auditor trainer. Is also qualified as a VDA trainer and possesses a huge knowledge about the IATF and the process approach for the IATF. I will leave you now with Paul and his presentation regarding the IATF, and will come again to share some questions with Paul at the end of his presentation. Thank you, Paul.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. Thank you, Pedro. I'm really pleased to have been invited to speak today at this summit, Automotive Summit. And the theme is IATF 16949. So I can try and bring you bang up to date with the developments in the IATF 16949 scheme, but also focusing on auditor competency and auditor development. And in this, we will look at it from different perspectives. We will look at it from the third-party auditor perspective, but we will also look at it from the internal and second-party auditor. So many of you dialing in will be aware that IATF 16949 was published in 2016. It took the requirements of ISO 9001 as the core. And like many industries, it felt that ISO 9001 did not go deep enough in many areas. So IATF added additional requirements. Some of those additional requirements that we saw were in section 7, which were around auditor competency. These were expanded requirements that were not in ISO TS 16949, but were added to the newly published IATF 16949. And we see in section 7 very clearly defined competency requirements for internal auditors, but equally second-party auditors. And we'll be taking a look at that criteria within the presentation. So globally, there are about 80,000 IATF 16949 certified organizations. More than 50% of those are within China. So China is by far the biggest country for IATF 16949 certifications. There are about 3,000 qualified third-party IATF 16949 auditors around the world. And IATF capture all the data on any non-conformity that is raised in any on-site audit. And what we can see on the screen now is in the previous 12 months, the number of major non-conformities that have been written against the top 10 clauses of IATF 16949 and the top 10 minor non-conformities. And it's really interesting to see that even 20 years after the development of the IATF scheme, that number 1 and number 2 in the top 10 relate to corrective action and problem solving. You would have thought 20 years into the scheme that the automotive industry would have grasped effective structured problem solving. including root cause methodology and systemic corrective action. And this is not just for product nonconformities, this could also be for system nonconformities as well. Then we see within the top 10, we see the control plan, we see new product introduction, and we see 8352, which is the output from new product introduction from a process design perspective. So this data is accumulated in the IATF database, and this data is shared with the auditor community to give an idea about where auditors are finding problems. This is obviously related to third-party audits. So some of you dialing in will already be third-party auditors. Some of you dialing in might aspire to become a third-party IATF 16949 auditor in the future. So to become an IATF 16949 third-party auditor is a very structured, complex process. So you've got to be able to demonstrate before you enter the process that you've got the relevant industry experience, automotive or related experience. And then you enter what's called the initial qualification process. So you have to do some online pre-study in what IATF call the ADP, the Auditor Development Platform, and you have to observe one third-party IATF 16949 audit. You then have to do the face-to-face training and evaluation. This week, we've actually had a conference of the 40 people around the world that are qualified to do the training or to do the evaluation. So that course is a 3.5-day training and a 1.5-day evaluation. And that is a fairly tough course, but it was interesting to see in the data that we had this week that the pass rate now has gone up to about 80% first time, which is significantly higher than it has been in the past. And I think that's because auditors are doing much better preparation before they come to the training. Once they go through the qualification, they have to be witnessed by the certification body that has sponsored them. Every 2 years, they have to be requalified. Sorry, the first 2 years, they have to be requalified through the ADP again. And then they have to ongoing maintain auditor certification. And a key word here is continued professional development. So they have to develop themselves and keep up to date with what is going on in the automotive community. And also they have to do a minimum number of audits and a minimum number of audit days per quarter. Now, obviously, because of COVID-19, that has been waived for this year so far because many auditors cannot get out and do third-party audits. So IATF have introduced something called IATF monitoring. They haven't yet sanctioned the use of remote audits, but they've implemented a system of remote monitoring. So this is if you want to become a third-party auditor, then this is the process that you have to go through. But the key thing is before you come in any IATF 16949 training, that you do adequate preparation. All of the things that I've told you about are defined in the rule book for IATF. Good bedtime reading. If you have any problem at sleeping at night, this is a good document to send you to sleep. But this is the document that defines the criteria for how to become a third-party auditor. So I think one of the most underused documents in the suite of IATF documents is called the IATF Auditor Guide. You can buy this from any of the oversight offices. It's around €30 to buy the document. And in here, it has a wealth of information about the competency requirements to audit against the IATF 16949 scheme. So within this book, one of the sections defines 5 key competency areas. So obviously to be an IATF 16949 auditor, you have to be able to apply the process approach, including risk-based thinking. And Pedro mentioned that I've been involved in trying to come up with ways that we can train auditors to understand what is truly meant by the process approach. Many ISO 9001 auditors, I do not think, have grasped it. So in IATF, there is a very structured requirement related to how an auditor should apply the process approach, incorporating risk-based thinking. Another area of competence is understanding customer-specific requirements, but particularly the automotive core tools. Many of you will be aware in IATF there's tools like FMEA, Control Plan, MSA, SPC, PPAP. If auditors don't understand those tools and how to audit them, they're not going to do effective IATF audits. Obviously, to do an effective audit, you need to have knowledge of IATF requirements, including the sanction interpretations and frequently asked questions, but you also need to better apply the requirements. I've met auditors that can memorize every single one of the IATF requirements. Even I cannot do that working with it every day. But sometimes those auditors cannot apply the requirements in an effective way during the audit. Auditors need to understand and apply the rules, the sanction interpretations, and the frequently asked questions. And auditors need to be proficient in the non-conformity management process. So that is writing non-conformities, closing out non-conformities, the whole process of non-conformity management, auditors need to better do. So when we evaluate IATF 16949 auditors, these are the 5 competencies that auditors get evaluated against. And there's no secret. Those competency requirements are defined in the IATF Auditor Guide. But this is an extract from the IATF Auditor Guide. The whole guide is structured around what do we want the auditors to understand? So in this particular extract, it's FMEA. What knowledge should people have in FMEA if they're going to be able to audit effectively? So they should be able to describe or define. Yeah, they should be confident in what the principles of FMEA are, but they should also have skills to know how to effectively audit FMEA. So when we do our evaluations for IATF auditors, this is the criteria. The criteria is the knowledge exams will test the auditor's knowledge of the subject. The skills we will evaluate through case study material, where the auditors are given FMEAs, they're given control plans, they're given MSA studies, and we're evaluating how effectively can they audit those within the context of a process approach audit. So that's the structure of all of the auditor guide, that it's all around knowledge and skills, which makes up competency. So some of you that are dialing into this will be internal auditors for IATF 16949. And in IATF, we have very clearly defined requirements for the different types of audit. So the first type of audit that we're taking a look at is quality management system audit. So this is the ability to audit any process in the quality management system. So again, very similar to third-party auditors, an internal auditor should understand the automotive process approach, including risk. They should understand customer-specific requirements. They should understand the audit criteria, 9001 and IATF. They should understand the core tool requirements. And actually, they should understand how to plan, conduct, report, and close out audit findings. So the competency requirements to be an internal auditor are very similar to the competencies that I explained for a third-party auditor. So I think the auditor guide is a good document to help in the development of internal quality management system auditors. And if you're going to be auditing manufacturing processes in your organization, obviously you need to know something about the manufacturing process. Because, for example, if I'm going to go and audit the painting process and I don't understand anything about paint technology, I'm not going to be asking the right questions. So I need the technical understanding of the manufacturing process. And that may become through experience, not training. But I also need to know about how to use the risk analysis done in the PFMEA. And I also need to be able to navigate my way around the control plan, because these are going to be two key audit documents when I go and audit the manufacturing process. So they are some of the competency requirements for a manufacturing process auditor. And then if you're going to audit the product, you need to know something about the product and the product requirements, but you need to better know how to use the relevant measuring equipment. So these are the three types of audits in IATF with three different defined competency requirements. If anybody internally is providing training, then obviously you need to better demonstrate in any external audit that those people are competent and qualified to do so. It doesn't have to be done by an external trainer, but if internal, you have to have the records of competency for the trainer. And then it's not just any good becoming an auditor, you need to maintain and improve. So we're going to be talking in a few minutes about tools that might help you in maintaining and improving your internal auditor competency. Obviously, you must do a minimum number of audits per year, but this is up for your organization to define. But by inference, it must be at least one, the minimum number of audits per year. And obviously, if there is changes, for example, we see a new FMEA handbook issued by AAG and VDA. If your organization or customer is mandating the use of that, then we need to have the competency to audit that effectively. And every one of the 80,000 IATF organizations should maintain a list of qualified internal auditors. So that's internal. And if we think some of you, maybe not in times of COVID, but normally should better go out and have the competency to audit suppliers. And surprise, surprise again, the competency requirements to go and audit suppliers for IATF 16949 is very similar to internal audit. That you should understand the process approach. You should understand customer and your own organization requirements. You should understand the requirements of the standards. You should understand the manufacturing processes of the supplier. You should understand the core tools and how to do audits. So many of you might be an internal auditor, but might also be qualified as a second party auditor. In bigger organizations, these could be two different groups of people. But for both, they need to demonstrate ongoing competency. So let's take a quick look then at tools and things that are available for you to help develop your auditor competency. Now, some of you might have already seen that about a year ago now, IAOB, the International Automotive Oversight Bureau in America, and Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders in the UK, developed a YouTube channel to try and assist with the development of auditor competency. And every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Portuguese or UK time, there is a new video issued. Each video is about 5 minutes long. It has a short introduction. There is a video clip of an audit in manufacturing, an audit of a support process. And then at the end of the video, we diagnose whether the auditor did an effective audit. So if you haven't already seen this, I would really strongly encourage, obviously it's completely free of charge. All the historic videos are available there for view. But this is a great way, I believe, of helping develop your auditor competency. So you can learn from some of the experts that are working within the IATF 16949 scheme. So equally, on top of the audit videos, last week we actually filmed some videos about the new CARA reporting tool. So in the next few weeks, there will be a series of videos issued to help people understand about the implication of CARA reporting. There is also a series of videos already published about the IATF COVID-19 response. So this is a really good source of information in this IOB SMMT YouTube channel. So I would strongly encourage you, if you haven't already, to go and seek out some of this to help you in your auditor development. Let's take a quick look then at what we train new auditors for IATF 16949 in the third-party qualification process. Now, auditors are trained in the CAP-DO approach to auditing. So the first thing we try and train auditors is we are not going to audit, plan, do, check, act. We're going to start our audit once we've understood an overview of the process. We're going to start our audit with questions around the process performance. What are we trying to achieve through the process? What are the process objectives and what is the current process performance? So we drive auditors to start their audits around the check phase of plan, do, check, act. We then ask the organization, okay, what are you doing to improve the performance of the process? How are you managing the risk and the opportunity within the processes? And obviously at the moment, there's probably more risk than opportunity introduced through the COVID-19 pandemic. So how are we managing the risks to ensure that we can meet the performance that has been set either by the customer or has been set by the organization? So that's the act. In any audit, we still need to make sure the process that we're auditing has been effectively planned so that we have all the right people, we have all the right resources that have been allocated to the process to make sure that the process can work effectively. And that can also include customer-specific requirements. So as auditors, we need to check the planning of the process. And then finally, we need to check the doing. So once we've understood about the process, the way that the risk in the process are being managed, the way that the process is planned, in a normal audit, if there's no COVID restrictions, we want to go into the work area and challenge the people working in the process to provide us objective evidence that the process is being carried out as planned. So this is the CAP-DO approach to auditing that we would train any third-party auditor. And I would strongly encourage you, as part of your internal audit development, don't just audit to a checklist, audit using the CAP-DO approach, because this approach to auditing will add far more value to the organization, rather than just auditing purely for compliance. And it does talk about in IATF 16949 that auditors should apply the process approach to auditing. So this is really effective application of the process approach using the CAP-DO methodology. And many of you, again, would have heard of the turtle diagram. The turtle diagram is not a mandatory IATF 16949 tool for third-party auditors, for internal auditors, for second-party auditors. But if I train third-party auditors, if I train internal auditors, I get the auditors to try and think the turtle approach. So if you're going to audit any process, you have to understand the scope. You have to understand the input and the output to the process. As we've just mentioned, we need as auditors to understand what the process is trying to achieve in terms of results. And then we can follow audit trails to asking about the people involved in the process, the with who. We can follow audit trails to the with what, the physical resources that are needed for the process. And we can follow audit trails to the how, the documentation and the records that are needed for the process to work effectively. And maybe we cannot find the issue with the process in the process. Maybe the issues in the process are being caused by the lack of support from a support process. So our audit trails can follow into other processes within the quality management system. So even if auditors don't if auditors don't use the turtle diagram, if they think this way, they are going to undertake an effective audit, drive the audit trails based upon performance and risk. Another area I believe auditors really need to develop their competencies is auditing the automotive core tools. So many people will have competencies in the individual tools, but a good auditor will be able to effectively audit the linkages between the core tools. So how is the output of the DFMEA? How has that provided an input into the process FMEA, including deployment of any special characteristics? How has the process FMEA been based upon the proposed process flow? How has the output from the process FMEA and the risks been an input into developing the control plan? How has the control plan provided the structure to define the standardized work? How has the control plan defined the relevant measurement systems that we need to use to make sure we can make measure a conforming product? And then how have we deployed statistical process control, particularly for the special characteristics, but also other risks that we've identified in the process FMEA? The goal of IATF is defect prevention and not defect detection. So how are we using tools like SPC in our new product introduction process, but also in our routine manufacturing? So when you're auditing, please do not go out and audit these tools in isolation. This is like a jigsaw puzzle. We need to be auditing the linkages between the tools. And I guarantee that is where you will find issues if you do audits effectively, that these things will not effectively fit together. I really do encourage you, if you haven't already done it, to look at the IATF Auditor Guide. So again, let's look at this example for measurement system analysis. So as an auditor, if we don't understand what the term discrimination means, that might mean that the organization has selected the wrong instrument to do the measurement, but we don't have the competency to challenge the organization on the selection of that equipment. So if as auditors, we look down these knowledge requirements and we find any gaps, then we can go away and do self-development. Also, in the requirements of IATF, it says that we have to do measurement system analysis on each type of measuring test equipment system. So we need to understand that as a requirement, but we need to know how to audit that. How are we going to challenge the organization on how they've grouped their measurement systems into types? If we don't have that competency, we are not going to do an effective IATF 16949 audit. So please, if you don't learn anything else from this presentation, please go away and look at this auditor guide. This can develop your competency as an internal auditor, develop your competency as a second party auditor, and also develop your competency as a third party auditor. Nearly at the end, the Common Audit Report application. I believe IATF should have implemented this 20 years ago, but they are implementing it now. They are trying to standardize that all of the 40-odd IATF 16949 recognized certification bodies are all going to be mandated that they have to use the same report template. And that report template will be for all types of audit: stage 1 audit, stage 2 audit, surveillance audit, re-certification audit, special audit. All audits after January the 1st, 2021 will be produced in this IATF CARA, Common Audit Report application. Now, this is going through the pilot phase at the moment. Certification bodies are trialing CARA, some more advanced than others, but the implementation date is the 1st of January 2021. Now, this will affect auditors, but it will also affect any certified IATF 16949 organization. Because if the auditor raises non-conformities, the organization will have to go into CARA to upload the corrective action that they've taken against the non-conformities. So there is going to be training provided to certification body auditors, and there is going to be training videos available to third-party certified organizations to help them with that process about how they upload the information, detailing any corrective action against any non-conformities that have been raised. So that's something that's coming. Certified organizations, you will see from the 1st of January a different structured report, but that report will be identical for all of the IATF recognized certification bodies. As you can imagine, this has been a massive project and there has been a lot of kickback about it, but I think in the long term, it is good for the scheme. So thank you very much for your attention. I think we have left ample time if anybody has got any questions on anything that we've covered in this presentation. So Pedro.
Okay, Paul, thank you very much. Very clear presentation, and it's always good, either for first and second party auditors, to get also a view of the third party audit figures, the number of NCs and so on, but always good to have a refresh for us third party auditors as well. We have come up here with a couple of questions, and in the morning we had one of our participants mentioning one of IATF issues for these days, the monitoring.
Yeah.
Can you please give some insight about this, if you have any feedback, how it is going on?
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, and I was actually doing a witness audit of a monitoring event earlier today, so it's fresh in my mind. So IATF as a group are very nervous about remote audits. Particularly, I think from Germany, they are very nervous about launching a program of allowing remote audits, even though ISO 9001 scheme has, the aerospace scheme has, pharmaceutical scheme has. Automotive are very nervous about the concept of remote auditing. So they have issued in the IATF COVID response something called IATF monitoring. So this is almost a last resort, that if the auditor hasn't been able to get onto site, there's a 90-day period before the organization goes into suspension. If 60 days after that, the auditor still can't get on site, IATF are allowing the certification body to do a remote monitoring activity, minimum 1 day. And what the auditor is trying to ascertain is, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, is there any areas of high risk in the organization? So, for example, have they reviewed and updated their contingency plan? Have they kept their audit program going? Have they re-established their quality objectives? Have they done good startup verification after any shutdown? So the monitoring activity, the conclusion is either high risk or low risk. If the conclusion is low risk, the organization can miss that visit, but there will be additional time added to the next on-site audit. If it's high risk, there will be another monitoring event. So that's what IATF have currently issued, but there is an IATF meeting next week that is further discussing the concept of remote monitoring, remote auditing, because now it is coming to a critical period that all IATF certificates were extended for 6 months.
Yeah.
COVID has gone on much, much longer than everybody expected. Second wave. So I don't think that 6 months is going to be enough. So I think IATF are going to have to issue another plan to allow organizations to keep their certification, but managing the level of risk by doing remote monitoring activity.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, sure. Just a comment. I wish I will not be audited when doing a monitoring because it's fresh to everybody. So I guess it will be also stressful for the auditor being witness audited during that time. Hopefully it will not happen to me. I think I will.
No. Okay, no. I think this is the first one today. So
okay. Another topic and that we discuss always when there is auditor meetings, the knowledge exchange meetings. Apart from the top non-conformities is also the relation between the minor and major non-conformities. And some cases, and I'm speaking as an auditor, some cases we see companies that are certified and that they have big gaps, let's say like this. Can you give us some insight on the OEM's feedback about the certification scheme, about this always a fight in between the minor and major non-conformities?
No, I think it's a great point. And IATF closely monitor auditors' performance and certification body performance on how many non-conformities average they raise per audit. The global average at the moment is about 3.5 non-conformities per audit, but only 5% of those are major non-conformities. So IATF monitor that, and there is quite a spread between certification bodies and there is quite a spread between auditors. There is also a big gap between the number of non-conformities auditors raise when they're not witnessed and when they're witnessed. You may have heard the term soft auditing. The way that I would train people is when you're doing any audit, imagine the next audit of that client is going to be a witness audit. So there's no point in being soft because you don't know if that client is going to get selected for the next witness audit. So I know soft auditing is a big problem, not just in IATF, but in the whole auditing industry because of the relationship between the auditor and the organization. But IATF are very, very closely monitoring this. And if certification bodies are seen that they're way below the average, then that is going to trigger more monitoring of that certification body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes during a break or during friend conversation, we hear, oh, you guys auditors, you have a quote on non-conformities to raise. Always I answer, no, we don't have a quote, we don't have an objective, we are just followed up to follow the rules. And that's it.
No, that's the right answer. But I think the danger, Pedro, with statistics is if you tell an auditor the global average is 3.5 non-conformities per audit, that's maybe what they think they're looking for. So data is very dangerous. But IATF don't want to say to auditors, you must raise 3.5 non-conformities per audit. But IATF say that you must raise non-conformities if they are non-compliant with the requirements.
Exactly. Just follow the rules. Exactly.
Follow the rules.
Just let me look here. I guess we have one more question coming up. Been an exception. I believe it's regarding the requirements for the third-party auditors. So third-party auditors have the requirement to perform 10 audit days per year and to do 1 audit per quarter. This participant is asking if there has been an exception for the first 2 quarters, but how about for the third quarter? Will there be a derogation for that as well?
Yeah, I think that we can with confidence say that IATF will not decertify any auditor that hasn't met those minimum requirements, because globally now, many of the 3,000 auditors cannot go to site to do on-site audits. So if you are a third-party auditor and you haven't done the minimum number of audits because of COVID, do not worry, you will not lose your certification.
Yes, I believe there used to be a normal derogation way to deal with that. I remember back some years ago, for some reason, I had no audits in first quarter, for instance, and then a lot of them in the next quarters. So the derogation was there to deal with that.
Yeah, your certification body can always, if it's a case like that, can always make an appeal to the oversight office. Okay. But there will be a general relaxation of that requirement, I think, probably for the next 6 or 9 months, given the COVID situation.
Unfortunately, it seems to be here to stay. So
yeah.
Also, one comment, you spoke about CARA. I had the opportunity to have the first contact with that 2 weeks ago. It seems very intuitive. Also because, and you for sure the same, we are used also for the VDA 6.3 platform.
Yeah, very similar.
So there is similarities in the layout and in the way to fill in. Can we expect trainings or quiz for the IATF auditors in the next times?
No, you can definitely expect training, because in the event that we did this week, we actually looked at some of the introduction videos, and the introduction videos are very, very good. I don't know whether you've had a chance to see yet, but in the CARA platform, there are some really good videos, take you step by step through. Yes. I don't believe there will be any examinations in CARA.
Okay, no quiz this time.
No quizzes, no. The next potential training and quizzes will be for the AIG VDA FMEA handbook. That will probably be coming early next year. But in CARA, my understanding is there would not be any examination for auditors in the use of CARA. But you will have to apply it, because every audit after the 1st of January will have to be done in the CARA tool. Yeah.
Sure. One more question coming up. Why can we have remote audit monitoring in the manufacturing plants, but not for the remote locations?
Right. IATF have a meeting next week. I have been very, very vocal that there is a big gap in the COVID-19 response about auditing of remote support functions. So that is on the agenda for IATF next week. My view is, why should an auditor put their life at risk to get on an aeroplane to go to a remote support function with 2 people, and maybe even those 2 people are not in the office, they're working from home? So my plea to IATF is that there needs to be something that deals with remote support functions. This week, I spoke to one client, 40 certified sites. If nothing is done in November, they will lose 39 certifications, because one remote support function for design cannot be audited because of COVID. Wow. So that support function supports 39 manufacturing sites. Black and white, the rules would say you have to take the certificates away from that organization. So IATF have to do something very quickly to address this situation around remote support functions.
Yes, for sure.
But there is a meeting next week that is being discussed, and hopefully we will see revision 5 of the COVID response issued very shortly.
Okay. Yes, for sure that we will see more changes in coming days or weeks, because the COVID situation is again coming up, at least here in Europe. So let's see what we can expect. Well, I was just looking, only some feedback, great presentation. Many thanks for so detailed presentation, and also from our side, Paul. Thank you very much for being here. I hope we get the opportunity to talk again in the near future. Maybe also with Niall Keeley. He was not possible for him to join today, as in your videos. But again, thank you very much. Stay safe, and we'll keep in contact.
Yeah, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Bye.